So for tonight's homework, students are going to do some of the things we practiced today in class. This is an activity in the first part, problem 1, that we do most days, where students are going to list the fraction and they're going to count by whatever increment they see here. So in this case, 1/4. So they would count and add a fourth each time. So they should count all the way up to 6/4. So students are going to see these numbers: 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4, and then 6/4. What they're asking to do is to circle the number that's equivalent to a whole. So here they show 0/4 is equal to 0, and then they wrote the whole number under it. This is the one the students are going to be able to do in here, and your student should be able to tell you which whole number that's equivalent to. Same practice in part B of number 1, but because they're going all the way to 14/6, they should be able to find 0, 1 whole, and 2 whole. So they should be able to find those 3 equivalent fractions. For problem 2, students are going to use parentheses. This is again something that we practiced in class today, to make 1 whole. So in this case, when students see thirds, they have to think about what fraction can they make from thirds that they're going to have equal to 1 whole. So they have to think, how many thirds is equivalent to 1? Your student should be able to answer that. The answer to that is 3/3. This determines how many make the whole. When we have 3 parts, we have 1 whole. So students are going to put parentheses around every 3 1/3. So every time they see 3 1/3, they know that those are equal to 1 whole, and they're going to put parentheses around them. Go ahead and have your student do that. When they get to the next part where it says multiply as shown, and it says draw a number line to support your answer. So when we see 6 1/3, students can do that a variety of ways. You see on this number line they did 3 at a time, because we know that 3 makes 3 1/3 will make 1 whole. So they showed that way. Students can also do individual thirds when they show that. So here 10 halves, we know that they're going to need 10 halves. 10 halves, if we think about how many whole that is. So 10 halves, instead of counting 1, we'd take 2, so it's going to be times 5. 5 times this is like saying 5 times 1, so students would need to make, 5 on the number line. And then they can show jumping each half, or they can show jumping 1 whole and calling that 2 times 1/2. It's up to your student. And then the same thing in C, where you see 8 times 1/4, they're going to do the same process. So they know 4/4 make 1 whole. If they have 8, then they have 2 whole, because 2 times 4 is 8. So they can draw a number line out to 2 whole, and they can show the fourths. And then they can show 2 jumps of 1/4, so this would be 2 times 4/4, and this would be 2 times 4/4. So that's just a way for students to understand how multiplying by a fraction works. On the back, they're going to do something similar. They're just talking about the fractions as copies, meaning that they have that number of thirds. So in this case, 7/3, they're going to know that it looks like that number. Then they're going to show how many make a whole. And then if they have any extra, we're going to add that on. That's a little bit different. So these are going to be mixed numbers instead of just whole numbers. So I'll show an example. I'll come down, B looks similar to 1, so I'll come down to C. So I need 11 copies of 1/5. So I know my fraction I'm working with is fifths, and I know I want to do that 11 times. So I have to think about, how many groups of 5 can I make from 11? So students may want to skip count this, or they may want to write out all the fifths. So if I think about 5/5 and I have 11, I know 5 can go in 1 whole, and then 5 more can go in 2 whole, and that you can see is a total of 10. And if I have 11, I have that extra fifth. So I'm going to say it's 2 times 5/5, because I know that I have 10, so here's those. But I also have plus 1/5 more, because my total here is 11, which means I have 2 whole and 1/5. So students should know how to do that. If not, one of the things that they can do is similar on the front where they write out all of the copies. So like from this one, they could do 1/4 7 times and use the parentheses. That may be easier for them to see and understand to start. So in this case, if I have 7 copies of 4th, I know that 4 go together. So this is 1 whole. And then I have these 1, 2, 3 fourths left over. So this would be 7 times 1/4, or 1 whole, or I guess 1 times 4/4 plus the remaining 3/4.